So, I watched a free international conference from data analysts who had been all doing it for 30 to 40 years, and they do analytics on the companies internationally all over the European Union, the United States, Indonesia, Australia, all of it, across the board. And I found it very interesting because to me, data and research is interesting. I like learning, but also I found it interesting because there were almost no views. And basically the only people viewing it were either extremely high up data analysts for businesses and corporations, or else a few random people like me. But there was only maybe 19 people like me who were watching it, and it was free. And I find that so interesting because people pay hundreds and even at times thousands of dollars to go to conferences with flashy speakers and, people who are talking about finances with charisma, but don't have decades of experience, or maybe they just got super lucky, have one business that popped off, and now people are paying tons of money to talk to them. And it's very interesting to me. You have these speakers on stages with lighting effects and smoke fog machines and stuff like that, and sometimes they don't have all of that, but they usually have pretty full conferences. And it's weird that you have people who are pure expertise on a subject, or you have this person over here who can talk about their experience with a business, and they happen to be a good speaker, so you're willing to pay them. And yes, these experts were a little dry. There was even one of them that English was so strongly not their first language. They were Dutch or something like that. I don't know for sure what they were, but they definitely, English was one of their side languages that they didn't use a ton. It didn't matter. The things coming out of their mouths were very informative and interesting. And since almost no one watched it, if anyone wants to know a breakdown of some of the information, I'm going to say it here because I thought it was important and very interesting. If you want to understand trends in business, if you want to understand research and statistics, you don't have to go and spend $1,000 to listen to some guru at a conference. Don't be so quick to waste your money, because that's you hoping that they tell you the one thing that gets you rich fast, and it's just gambling. I basically came to the conclusion that people want flash and they'll pay cash. So the statistics for the last 30 to 40 years, some of them have been reading the data and taking data, just raw data, about corporations and trends in consumerism and trends in where money is going and stuff for 40 plus years. That's incredible to me. All these data analysts for the corporate world were finding trends that were going in similar directions, even though they were from different places. And so they were basically substantiating each other's findings by having similar findings, which I thought was also interesting. Ever since about the 70s, there has been a forward momentum that's been gradually building toward sustainability. And if it would have grown to the way that it is now, in the 70s when it first started, we wouldn't be having the big scary climate change news that we're having right now. We wouldn't be having, all of the crap. Anyway, that's not really the point of this video, but unfortunately that stuff is probably going to get worse because we're still way behind at this point. But there is a massive trend towards sustainability, and some corporations are capitalizing on this and saying that they're sustainable because they make a couple of changes, and those couple of changes are not actually fully sustainable for the entire company, but because they made a couple of changes and they can slap some sort of a seal on it, they get to raise the prices of their products, and they get to basically rebrand, and that's drawing in consumers. The majority of consumers do not want to live in pollution. Even besides climate change, it's bad for our health, and there's ridiculous amounts of research to show that pollution's not good for us. So even people who are not necessarily believing in things like global warming are still trending towards sustainability because it's better for our overall health as human beings. It's like 97% of the world's air is not healthy anymore. It's polluted air. Like, there's tons of rates of like asthma, for instance, that's gotten way worse because air quality is less good. So people don't want to live in pollution. They don't want to live in trash. They don't want to live in crap. They don't want to live in a bunch of weird chemicals or forever chemicals or microplastics. So overall, whether people necessarily were doing it for the right reasons, people were still pursuing sustainability. It's also cheaper. It's not just cheaper for us as people to have, for instance, instead of paying 5 cents per bag, just bring your own reusable bag. Instead of having as big of an electric bill, you get more energy efficient appliances to help reduce your bills. It also helps the planet. So, works out, win-win. Save me some money, heck yeah. And it also saves corporations money. Most of all of the data that's been put forward is showing that corporations that switch to more energy efficient or sustainable practices, it actually saves them a bunch of money. It saves them on their production, and a lot of them are starting to get more and more stuff locally, which is saving them tons. It's not just saving them production for themselves, but it's also saving them money on their supply chains. And it's also saving them money to use recycled stuff over and over again instead of having to pay for each individual object themselves, which helps them. Just the same as you having more energy efficient stuff saves you money and also happens to help the planet, same thing for the corporations. If they put more energy efficient stuff into their places, it saves them a lot of money. A bunch of them are starting to put like polymers and stuff along their air duct lines, trying to make it so they're not using as much energy to do things like heating and cooling of the buildings. This is great, not just for their bill, but also for the planet. And so they're really enjoying that they are having to spend less to make products. But on top of that, corporations are also, in a lot of places, taking advantage of the rebranding and people basically wanting to buy with their ethics. There's been a huge shift in consumerism from necessity to I want to follow my values. And especially in countries where it is more financially stable or wealthy, this is even more strongly true. There's been a big shift in the way that we have been doing things from being content to being, I'm going to push my values. My values determine whether something is good or bad. It's not the product's quality. So maybe you go to buy like a set of plates. Who made the plates and what their values are matters more to you in some ways as a consumer, according to data, right now in our current culture, than the actual quality of how those plates were made. You want to know that they're made with good quality materials, but them being necessarily the best plates on the planet isn't as important to you. Lots of people liking them, saying they're decent plates, is good enough for you. You also want to know that they were made in some sort of way that was ethical. You want to feel good about yourself when you buy the plate. And so you're not just buying the plate to be a plate. You're buying the plate also to help make yourself feel like you're a better person, or that you've done something good for the world. And so that's becoming, again, over the last multiple decades, bigger and bigger and bigger, until it's like very integrated into a lot of our culture. There's also a big issue with transparency. A lot of things that corporations and companies used to be able to get away with, they're just not able to get away with as much anymore. It's kind of like with crime. Certain people like to say, oh, look at all the crime on the news, but in actuality, the crime rates have gone down for most places. And the reason being is there's cameras everywhere. There's transparency. There is less ability to hide what you are doing that is unethical. And so a lot of things keep getting brought to light that corporations are doing, and it really, really puts a stain on them. And the stain can sometimes be difficult to overcome. You can see that with multiple corporations. I don't normally like to call out specific ones, but I can give a good example. Activision Blizzard used to mean high quality video gaming, and it got taken over somewhat by more corporate players instead of gaming interest enthusiasts. And because there was less passion for the games and more passion for how can we squeeze money out of this, it became much more of a corporate environment. And then it turned out not only were the games starting to be of less and less quality, but also they were treating their people with less and less quality, to the point where it has gotten extremely graphic. You can go look at the lawsuits that the state of California is bringing against Activision Blizzard if you want to, but it's, in some cases, kind of graphic, some of the things that have happened, especially to women. And for years, like more than a decade. And a lot of people, like by the millions, dropped off from playing Activision Blizzard games. And they keep putting out not that great quality. They keep messing up with stuff. They keep having an expansion that's lackluster, or DLCs that are lackluster. They keep having to put delays or flat out cancellations on games and stuff, because people don't want to give their money to somewhere that's unethical and that's not putting out a high quality product. And so, like, even, the whole Microsoft taking over Activision Blizzard, that is being pushed back against. And there's tons of research that you can do on your own on this matter, but the point is, it's an example of a company that has faced backlash because they basically have not kept up with cultural trends, and they failed because transparency is there. They might have gotten away with it for over a decade, but eventually someone showed up and they had the ability to leak information or have a camera. Just a camera. There's so much proof of the stuff that they've done that they can't really get out of it. So, yeah, they're kind of trapped by their own lack of ethics. And people don't want that. Like, according to research, according to data, people want ethics. And not just consumers, but also talent. People want to work for a company and feel fulfilled by the job. They want to feel like they are doing something ethical. They want to feel good about the work that they are making. And so people who are talented are not wanting to work at places that are showing less at being ethical. And so it is drawing young talented workers. And so the businesses that are pursuing sustainability, that are pursuing ethics, are growing. They're doing better. And so a lot of businesses are handling it in a few different ways. One of the ways is they raise the price of all their products that are rebranded with the sustainability, even though it costs less to produce that product. It is cheaper to produce the recycled product, or you can recycle me product. It is actually more cost effective for them. So their profit margin is widened, not just by it's cheap to make this product, but also by we can sell this product for more because people will pay more for the word sustainable. On top of that, they are making money off of this by getting their quality standard when producing the product up to a certain point to get a seal or a label or a stamp of approval from whatever. When they get that seal or that stamp of approval, they don't have to keep that up anymore. And some companies are just letting it lapse. They're able to put the stamp on there because at some point their product was fully to that standard. But a lot of the stamps don't come with a constant review. It's a one-time thing, or maybe it's once in a year that they check it. And so the rest of the time the company can kind of be substandard, but they get to keep the seal that says, oh yes, I'm sustainable. Or, oh yes, this is, grass chicken, cage-free chicken, whatever. And they do the minimum to comply with that at the moment. And then after that, they just do whatever. There's no regulation on continually, for the majority of those stamps and seals, continually meeting that. They only have to do it enough to get the seal in the first place. There's also that companies are saying, oh, well, I'll make changes when government regulation is here. I am pushing for government regulation. This makes them look good, but not have to actually do anything. And according to analytics and research, consumers don't actually like that. Consumers are not stupid. They are, subject to a lot of propaganda. They're susceptible to a lot of commercialing, and consumers can be manipulated for sure, because commercials pull at our emotions, and so once our emotions are riled up enough, we can absolutely be manipulated. No one is impervious to that. It's the truth. You can be manipulated. I can be manipulated. But in actuality, we're not complete and total idiots, and there is a massive data trend toward companies that say, we want this kind of regulation. Consumers are going to them if they are already putting it into practice first. The government has not put this regulation out there yet, but this is the kind of regulation I would like to see, so this is what I'm implementing in my company. That draws in consumers. Consumers respect places that actually are showing action and not just saying stuff. If a company is saying, hey, I'll do that once it's required, but it's not required, so it's not my fault, people hate it. So that is, if you have a small business or something and you're saying something like that, if it's not working for corporations, it's not going to work for you either. You got to be ahead, showing off how ethical you are, showing off how on the right track you are, and that brings in the money. It is a easy way to sell your brand. Selling it as sustainable, it doesn't mean everything you do has to actually be sustainable, unfortunately. Sadly, the other thing that some companies are getting away with is they are paying to offset their emissions. They're not actually making any structural changes or doing any investing into creating less emissions themselves. They're just paying some sort of like park, or they're just paying some sort of forest reserve or something, and they're paying that to say, look, I'm helping some sort of nature preserve over here, and that offsets the damage that I'm doing with all of my emissions. One of the analysts said it, and I'm basically gonna almost word for word repeat because it was so good. He said, that's like going to church and paying the priest to forgive your sins. Making a donation to the church does not absolve you if you're not changing anything in your life. And it's the same for a corporation. Paying to offset emissions, but doing literally nothing to actually reduce your emissions, it's pointless. It's ridiculous. And it's starting to be seen as a negative thing by consumers. So companies that are doing that are kind of getting a little left behind because it's not good enough. And it's not good enough because, oh, you're trying to play me, but it's not good enough because there's other companies who are gladly willing to do more, and people are drawn to that. And this trend, this forward trend with people who are younger being more into activism and more into really putting a stamp of their values and their morals on things, it's moved things forward in some ways, and then in some ways, when you have a corporation that's trying to really create its own culture, it's created conflict because of that. Because the corporation wants everyone to be really, really passionate about itself. But what people are genuinely passionate about is ethics. And so they have to mix the sustainability with the people that are actually working in their company and not just with the consumers. Culture creation cannot just be about consume, 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 buy, buy, buy. Overconsumption is actually detrimental for us as human beings. It's detrimental for the planet as a whole, and it's actually detrimental for corporations. One of the analysts said it really well, so I'll just almost word for word them as well. Sustainability is no longer a conversation about mitigation. It's a conversation about adaptation. Because it's not like sustainability is this goal and once you hit it, you don't have to keep doing anything. Sustainability is an ongoing habit. It's like the difference between, this is me talking now. I think of it, I was thinking as I was listening to this person say, it's no longer a conversation about mitigation, it's a conversation about adaptation. This is an ongoing thing, not hit a goal, don't have to worry about it anymore. That's what the analyst said. I was thinking, so it's basically like a diet. You can go on a fad diet, lose a couple of pounds, but if you didn't actually make any changes to your real life, that weight's gonna come all back. Rushing right back. All the problems that you were having, all the things that you weren't liking, you know, the majority of the time it comes rushing back. And it's much more effective to change your lifestyle, even in small ways, if you want the weight to stay off. You can say, you know, with money, finances, if you make one big change, you're like, okay, look, I bought this stock. Say you bought, I don't know, Apple stock. I'm gonna get a little bit of dividends back. Cool. I have that. One single stock, and then you never look at it ever again. You could maybe get something for that. That's something. But in actuality, what would help you more is once a month to put a small amount into your portfolio. Or even once a year if you can't afford once a month. 4 times a year. Whatever you can afford. Putting incremental amounts into there is a lot more effective than one single purchase, because you might be purchasing it at a bad time, you might be purchasing it at a great time, and it still is showing, according to research, according to data, that over the decades small little bits in all the time gets you more money in the long run. It's the same thing with the corporations. Practicing sustainability is not just capitalizing on right this second I'm gonna look good. It's a forward momentum that's continuing. The analysts were asked if the data shows any calming down or slowing down for the trend towards sustainability, and they said no. If anything, it is becoming bigger and more important, and any corporation that doesn't jump into the bath water with the other corporations that are already playing in there about sustainability, they're going to get left behind. They're going to get dropped. People don't have the patience and the tolerance for crappy products and non-effective toward the world products. They want effective products, and they want products that make them feel good as a person, make them feel like they're doing something good for the rest of the world. People want to feel like they're part of a community. People want to feel like they're part of a whole, and they're doing that with their purchases. Even though we had COVID-19 and we had the whole social distancing thing, in actuality, we're a tribe species. We're a species that is a social species. Just like, you know, say orcas, they don't do well by themselves. They are happy and they are healthy when they're in a pod of other whales. Humans don't necessarily do that great by themselves. They do better, they have longer lives when they're with others, when they're involved with others. They've done tons of research on the people who have the longest longevity, who have the longest lives, and the people with the most longevity are the people who had good social contact throughout their life. They had solid relationships, they had people they felt they could trust and rely on and interact with and have conversations with. We're a community species, and it's showing in our consumerism. So companies are gonna have to adjust, and some companies are already adjusting and some are a little behind. A lot of them are playing catch up, who are major corporations right now, because they thought, oh, this will be a fad, but it's not a fad. All of the data shows that it is not a fad. All of the data shows that this is going forward into the future. And it's really important for average Joe Schmoes to know that, because it helps us know where to invest our money. It helps us know, you know what, this stock or this ETF, this index fund, whatever you want to pick, this thing is probably not going to do well in the future because it's not getting on board with where the data and where the analytics are pointing. That's the truth. People want things to be more sustainable. They want to feel like we're not exploiting every resource, so there still will be resources for my kids. There will be resources for the future generations. We're not using everything up. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the villain. And they're spending in that way. Even though they're poor, that's how they're spending. It's their way of trying to take a stand. And you might say, oh, corporations, they're so big, they're so powerful, no one can make a difference against them. They're almighty, you know, have all the authority and the power. The government even plays fiddle to them. You know what? Consumers ain't buying their product. Even the big corporations can have to shift direction. You might feel like, oh, we could never take them down. But the little guys, when we band together, we can make them shift direction. And according to data, that is what is happening. According to the last, again, more than 40 years of data on corporate trends and on consumer trends and on money trends, that's where things are going. That's where things have been going for a long time. The last thing that I took away from this conference was that it was interesting to me that data shows that corporations that partner longer term with nonprofits do better than corporations who do a short-term nonprofit spiel. So when, say, a business or a corporation says, hey, get this product temporarily for the next month or 3 months or whatever, and we'll make a donation of part of your purchase to this nonprofit, or we'll do, this flashy big lump sum. When you buy that item, you're not actually making it so that there's more going to the charity. The corporation has already committed to how much they're going to give. And because they've already committed to how much they're going to give, every time you make a purchase or you make a donation at the cash register, you're actually paying for part of what they said they were going to give. You are making up the difference with your dollar that you donate. You're making it so that the corporation has to spend one less dollar of their own money to meet the commitment that they already had made. You're paying for the donation that they were already promising. So, you're not actually accomplishing anything when you do that. More and more people are starting to find that out, and they don't like it. Long-term partnerships with nonprofits helps keep things local, helps the local community to benefit, and helps the corporation long-term to look like a good corporation. So people are a lot more fond of when, say, for instance, Coca-Cola does sports programs at all these different schools and auditoriums and sports teams and stuff. People like that because it's long-term, it's ongoing. When a corporation says, hey, you know what, we run grocery stores, and after a certain amount of days, any leftover products, we donate to these local shelters. And they do that ongoing and not just temporary. People like that. Oh, we run a clothing store, and after a certain amount of months, any leftover clothes, we donate to the homeless shelter. People like that. If it's ongoing, if they feel like it's helping their community, if they feel like it's actually creating a positive change in the long run, instead of some temporary flashy, it's almost like a commercial. Oh, this temporary nonprofit partnership, it feels like gimmicky. But when it's ongoing and it's long-term, according to data and according to statistics, people feel a lot better about it. There are people who would gladly shop at the grocery store that gives to the homeless shelters because they can't afford to buy buildings and create non-market housing. They can't afford to, go to the homeless shelter and donate all their own stuff that they need to use. But they can afford to buy from the grocery store who's helping the homeless shelter. And since they're worried about the housing crisis, this is some way that they feel like they can contribute. People feeling like they have some sort of agency when they are buying things based on their values and on sustainability is creating a momentum for them that makes them feel good about their own personal life and about the world as a whole. It gives people hope. It gives people a sense of autonomy. And so when they feel like it's not just a quick scam, but it's a actual real commitment long term. Oh, this place works with local farmers and they've been doing that for years. Wow, that makes me want to shop here. It changes the perspective. So a lot of corporations are having to deal with this fact that temporary bonding with nonprofits is not nearly as trust building as an ongoing partnership with nonprofits. It also forces the company to show its ethics by what nonprofits it partners with. And so corporations have to intentionally choose to exemplify their values. When they don't, they mess up. For example, I'll call out another corporation since I can think of one off the top of my head. Budweiser. They made a can that had a trans influencer on it. And a bunch of people on the right got kind of upset about it. And instead of saying, yeah, we have this value, Budweiser pulled back. They could have kept all the customers who supported trans rights, and they could have kept making money. Instead, they pulled back, trying to get the right to be able to forgive them. The right doesn't hate them less, but now also the left hates them too. So Budweiser kind of crushed themselves by not stepping forward and saying, yes, here's my value. I'm choosing to go ahead and say long-term, ongoing, here's my value. You get to keep customers by saying that as a corporation. You get to choose your consumers. You get to choose. There's more people, technically, there's more people on the left than there are on the right, as far as values go. If there was no electoral system for our voting system, and it was just one vote per person, according to research, according to studies, a Republican would never get into office ever again. There's just not enough Republicans, and there's way too many people who view things in a more progressive way. Conservatism is going the way of the dinosaur. It's just not something that a lot of people are into. The majority of people in the United States lean left. The electoral system is the only reason that Republicans even get into office. But maybe a company wants to cater to the more Republican side of things, because the Republican side of things tends to have already inherited a bunch of generational wealth. And I've seen before people say, hey, I only want to sell to the rich because the rich can pay more. There's corporations that definitely can say, I'm going to say my values are over here with the rich people. That's their choice. But by making a statement, by your choosing of the nonprofits that you partner with, you are getting customers. And a lot of corporations think they're losing customers if they make a statement, if they rock the boat, if they do something too much, and they want to somehow cater to everyone instead of picking a lane. And by trying to cater to everyone, they're actually costing themselves money, according to the data, according to the actual numbers, the big, massive, giant catalog of consumer data. It's very interesting to me. And the cultural shift in, it's not just if these pair of jeans are a good pair of jeans, but also how sustainably were these made? How bad am I as a person for buying this fast fashion? Like, there's a moral query there when someone goes to buy it now. And that moral query started back in the 70s when climate change stuff was first starting to be put forward by scientists. There was a lot of skeptics. There was a lot of resistance to enacting anything about it, and we're paying the price now. But people also are fed up with that resistance. The majority of the world, not just even the majority of the United States, the majority of the world, this is not just analytics from the USA, this is analytics across countries all over the world. This is international, okay? International statistics show that people are fed up with climate change being resisted by corporations. It shows that people want to feel morally good about themselves, that they want to feel like they're helping other people and helping the planet. People want to feel like the thing that they're doing is going to help long term. It's not just a temporary fix. They want something really substantial. And you can gain customers by stepping into sustainability. And corporations, even the ones who don't do it for the right reason, they're just doing it to increase their profit margin. They're literally just doing it to save money on the back end creating the product and to make money on the front end selling the product for a little more. They're excited. They get to have the best of both. They're not doing it because they care about the planet. They could care less about the happiness or the morality or, you know, any of that kind of stuff that's involved. They're just seeing the money. Even the ones that are doing it for the wrong reasons are still moving forward into the future. They're still going to make it. The companies and the corporations that are falling behind on the platforms that they're staying on that are not about sustainability are the ones that are losing. And they're the ones that, going forward into the future, according to all the data, are probably going to go bankrupt, close down, not make it. That's just where the data is going. I found it really interesting, even though the speakers were boring, very dry. You know, what they were saying was still very interesting because they were explaining the last basically 45 years of corporate change. And that's very interesting to me. I like research. It was sad to me that more people weren't watching it.